All right, we're going to continue on. In an ideal world, at least, we're going to do two basic things today. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add error messages to what we've been working on. And then secondly, we want to kind of bridge the gap, so to speak, so that we're not going to do a join, but we're going to make sure that when you've got a blog post, the blog post will be your blog post. In other words, if you've got multiple users, each user will just see their blog posts. Does that all make sense? Okay. Then tomorrow we're going to finish up. We're going to use Heroku to put everything out on the internet, including our database. Okay? And if we get all that stuff done between today and tomorrow, and I think we will, then as been told, Wednesday will be a lab. And now I just want to mention this to you. I'm quickly put that. All right. So first thing I would like you to do, please, is go into your controllers and find your store user controller file. It looks like this. It's not a very big file. All right. And I don't know if you've got this in there or don't have this in there. I really don't know. All right. But I wanted to show you something, and hopefully this is all going to work today the way it should work, at least. All right. And that is, so let me come out here, close that, and http://localhost 8888. All right, so right now, if I come in here and I say, for example, new user. So I click here, it brings up the new user the way it should. And if I click send right now, it still says register new user. In other words, it kept me on the page. But when I look here, notice what it gave me here. A lot of stuff, to be honest with you. All right, so notice it says error. User validation failed. Username, path username is required. And then there's some junk. And then there's another one, all right, that says validation error, password is required. So in other words, the system is attempting to tell me that there's a problem. But right now, all we're doing is pushing the user back, but really there's an error, and we are not letting the user know that indeed there is an error. Okay, does that make sense? So we're going to change that right now. All right. And the way I'd like you to change that is with that particular file up, right here. First of all, we don't need to console log this. So for now, at least, all I'm going to do is just comment that out. If I want it in there later, it's in there. All right? So what I want to do now is above this if error thing that's in there, all right, we're going to add this. So if there's an error, and I'm going to go over all this in just a second, so you're going to have to type in 2 lines of code here. So I'll give you a second to put that in, okay? Now, I may or may not have mentioned this before, but when you do take a look in here and you look at all this stuff, this, for instance, right here, this is an object. All right, where it comes in, it gives you the error notice properties, kind, path, etc. So you see a whole bunch of stuff in there with keys and values. All right, so there is stuff in there already. So what we're saying here is we want you to go through and basically all we care about is just the key and the message. If this works the way that it should, rather than showing all of that junk, as you just saw, all it's going to show is the 2 error messages. All right? In other words, what we're looking for is just this one right here, password is required, and the other one, that username is required. Does that make sense? All right. Why? Because in just a couple minutes, we're going to take that information and we're going to actually put it out on the screen. All right. And then we'll go on a little further, and when we do, then we'll learn how to customize that as well. All right. So I want to see if this worked or if I broke something with the luck that I've been having. So I'm going to save this. All right. And you already saw those errors, etc., that are in here. So what I'm going to do, it started up again, but I'm going to stop it and start it. You don't have to do that. But I just would like to have a blank slate here, so to speak. All right, so there it is. It's up there again, and it's not broken. That's always a good sign. So, again, I'm going to come in here just like I did a minute ago, and I'm going to attempt to register a new user, but this time I'm just going to click send like we did before. All right, and now take a look over here. See what I get? Does that make sense to everybody? So what I did was I told it to go in, and where it's giving me all that information, I just said to print out the key and its associated value, and that's what that is, because that's really and truly, that is all that I want. All right? Okay, but that's all fine and dandy, but we want to make that visible to the user, because remember, the end user isn't going to be going out to a server console to see what's going on. All right, so how do we do that? All right, so I'm going to come back in here, and where we have our if error, for lack of better words, this is not well put, but the way I'm going to put it is we're going to massage what I just put in here a little bit. And what I mean is we're going to come in here, let me get rid of that so we've got some room here. And I'm going to create a variable. So I'm going to say const validation errors equal. All right. Now don't worry if it does come up with any kind of errors, because we're not finished yet. All right, but we are creating a variable called validation errors. We want a variable to actually hold those values. All right, we still want to do everything that's shown in here. All right, but when we're done, all right, we don't really want, we don't really want to come in here now and console log these. All right. Again, I was doing that just so you could see the errors that we're going to attempt to get. So again, I'm going to comment that out, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say req request dot session dot validation errors equals validation errors. So again, in an ideal world, what is going to happen now, and not yet because we still have to make a couple more changes, but ideally now what's going to happen, if you look up on the screen here, please, and I'll go right back to that if you're still typing in it, the error is going to appear right here, or the errors, they're going to appear right there. That's what we want to have happen. Okay? Now we've got to make a couple additional changes here for that to take place. That's going to allow us to store that, all right, but we still need to make a couple of changes. So if you haven't saved, good idea to come in here and save. And let's go in and open up our new user controller.js file, which is nice and small. It looks just like this. All right, 3 lines. We're going to add a line to it, 1 line. And that is, we're going to come in here and we're going to say, after we register, all right, we're going to put a comma here, And then we want to basically, for lack of better words, we want to add an object. And if you say, I don't know what you mean, well, just bear with me for a second here. Let me put it in, and hopefully it'll make sense then. All right? It doesn't seem like that when you put those on the end. So in other words, when we come in to add a new user, we want to be able to check and see whether or not there were any errors that were made when we attempted to add the new user. Does that make sense? All right. So I'm going to save this because that's really all we need there. All right. And there's one more change we have to make, and then we'll be able to look at this and see whether or not it worked. All right. So that's it for this file. So I'm going to close the new user controller. I'm going to close the store controller. I don't know why that's open, but I'm going to close that too. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to open up the Register.Ejs file. All right, so I'm going to come down into here, and there's my register, or in here, there it is. All right, you know what this one is. This is the one, again, as you'd guess, that we use when we're registering a new user. All right. Now, where do we want to show this stuff? Well, to me, it would make sense to show it right up above that form itself. Remember, the form has just got the username and the password. So right up above that, we're going to add something. So if you look up on the screen, I'm going to literally put it right up above the form tag. All right? And there's probably, I don't know, maybe a half dozen lines right now we have to put in. Maybe it's a little more than that. But it's fine. Either way, it's fine. All right, so we're going to come in here. First thing we want to do is we're going to have to put in a little bit of code. That now, okay. All right, I'm going to move this over just because I want to make sure everybody can see everything I'm putting down, okay? Well, it's always a good idea that when you put this in, to immediately put in your closing one, so that's what I'm going to do here. We still have some code to put in here, all right, but we've got that. Now, here, we're doing exactly what you think. Error is not equal to null, meaning that there's something that's in there. Plus, you've got to have at least one error. Does that make sense? All right. Remember, there's two possible errors. And there's actually more than that, but there's at least two. You know, you either don't have a password or you don't have a username. All right. We're going to handle in a couple minutes. There's also the possible error in. What happens if you put in a username that's already in there? All right, we'll talk about that in just a minute. All right, so we don't know how many errors there are going to be there. There's going to be none, or there's going to be one, or there's going to be two. Probably that's going to be it. But we're going to put them in an unordered list. All right, and this is just some bootstrap. But what we want to tell it right now to do is to iterate through the list. All right? And again, we'll open up our curly. Whoops. And then we'll stop that. We don't need this closing curly now. I'm going to put it down below. Now, there's still some stuff that has to be keyed in right here. All right, we'll do that in just a moment. But I want you to take a look at what's happening in here. Literally, there's like 1 or 2 more lines we have to type in, and that's it. So what are we doing here? We're checking for possible errors. If there are any, we're putting them into an unordered list. And here we're going to iterate through the unordered list by printing out the associated list items. Exactly what you think we would do. All right? Oops. Li. Now, I put this on a separate line. You don't really have to, but that's what I did. But take a look at that when you get done and see if it makes sense to you or it doesn't make sense to you. Again, we're saying is if there are any errors, we want you to go through and list each error on its own line as a list item. All right?
Is that double quote between list item group and list item?
This one here.
Danger supposed to be
This
there?
one shouldn't be there. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, this should all be blue. All right, now I'm going to save this because there's something else we have to do in a couple minutes, but I want to save this and I want to go back to here and I'm just going to refresh the screen here. Oh, don't like something, so hold on. Let's see, length is undefined. Should be paren. Which line is it? Flagging here. Not there. $34. See, in some programming languages you do this, but that it shouldn't be like, it shouldn't be like that here. I'm trying to see figure out what the problem is. Expected token, parenthesis. Okay. Register Ejs. I'm getting the same error I got before, so. Property length of undefined. That's my code. No. This shouldn't matter. Oops. let me just try this. This isn't right, but I'm going to try it anyway. Still doesn't like length. Doesn't like this.
Whenever we type errors, where is it getting errors from?
It's being set. It's an object that's being set in the program.
So it's length need to be different?
Nope.
Doesn't look like
And it is not in parens. You know, in other words, in some languages, you have to do this. Whoops. You have to do this. And I thought JavaScript ain't one of them languages, and it's not. All right, let's see if it worked first of all. So I'll come in here, and I'm going to say login. And I'm going to say new user. Still get me there.
There's something wrong with our errors here.
What's that?
So there's something wrong with our errors here because it's saying
Yeah.
it's undefined.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll look at it during the break. Let's go on because I want to go on. We're not going to be able to see the errors now, but I want to go on. There is something else that we can do right now. So let's do that. That is, what I want us to do is to go out, please, to npm.js.org, and we're going to add another package. And that package that we're going to add is called mongoose-unique validator. Okay? As it says, it is a plugin which adds pre-save validation for unique fields within a mongoose schema. What we want to do, in addition to that other thing that just didn't work, what we want to do is we want to make sure that if somebody comes in as a user and there's already a username by the name they attempt to put in for their username, that they're given a message that that username already exists. All right? So I'm going to just come over here and copy this npm I mongoose unique validator. All right? And you know the drill by now. We've got to go in and bring up our server.js file. And up near the top where we have all these other consts, you know, something equals this, require, we're going to put this in. But first we have to go in here. I'm going to stop the run. And I'm going to add the install. Again, npm I mongoose-unique validator. Enter. That put that in. It should not break anything. Shouldn't. I don't know why it would. So I'll run the program again. All right, program's up and running. And again, now we can come in here and say const unique validator equals require mongoose unique validator. All right, just like that. Now, we're getting the gray because we haven't yet put it in. We're going to do that in just a minute. All right. Copy this line. We may not even need it here, and if we don't, we'll remove it. But copy the entire line, if you would, please. All right. And go over to the models user file. I mentioned this to you last week. I'm going to say it to you again quick. Under models, we want to find the user file. All right, and we're going to put that right here, right there. So I just added it. You may or may not remember this from last week, but I mentioned that when you come in here and you do something like this, where you say unique true, you can put your own error message in there if you want to do that. All right? Well, that's totally fine, but the key thing, not even that so much for right now, we'll go back and we'll change that in a bit, but we want to make sure right now, just because we say it's unique, it's going to give an error when we attempt to save it to the database if it already has that in there, except it won't, because what's one thing about working with Mongo, what's our primary key? It's the object ID, right? So if right now we attempt to add 2 users in with the same username, it's going to allow it. We don't want that to happen. In fact, we want to keep that from happening. All right? So right below the schema, so right here, again, I'm right below where we just ended the schema, right there. We just put in a single line of code that says user schema dot plugin. All right, user schema dot plugin unique validator. Now, if you look up on the screen, I am expecting that the name I used here, right there in gray, is the same one you used up here. The caseness matters, the spelling matters. So if you didn't call it that, or you spelled it different, or whatever, they have to be the same. All right, they have to be the same, or it's not going to work. All right. So what that will do, as soon as we fix the other error, is it should come up. It won't do it now because, like I said, of that other error we have. But if we go in now and attempt, so I've already got a username in there of Jeff. If I create another one named Jeff, it should come up and say username expected to be unique, and then it'll say value Jeff to let me know that it's already got that. All right? Okay. All right. And this is bad because what I actually want to do is I want to find out what the heck is wrong with this error and fix it. So I'll tell you what, just sit and work for a couple minutes if you would. I'm going to pause this and then we'll come back because there's other stuff I can have you do, yes. All right, I'm going to continue on then. And if you would please bring up your story user controller.js file. Okay. The problem was in here, and it was the way that I had everything set up in here. Now, before you type anything, this is word wrapped. Okay, that's one line. All right, and I had it spread over multiple lines, and for some reason, between that and the way I must have had the parens or whatever, it was screwed up. Now, what should happen if you look up on the screen, don't worry for a second about typing anything in. But if I come out here now, so notice, there's the error that we're going to get, and we'll change that error in just a minute, but that's the error you get if you have, I've already got one named Jeff, and I try to put in another one. So, if I put nothing in, and I send, then I get that. Now, you can go and play with this if you don't like the coloring, etc., if you want to add some spaces, but I'm going to show you how you can customize that. We're not going to do much. We'll just say something like username is required and password is required, but that's a little confusing right now. All right, so we'll change that in just a moment. But as far as I know, everything else that I gave you was correct. So if you can, please just make sure that this section, this whole thing in here, that's in your story user controller.js file looks like that. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. Again, notice that this line right here, this is a word wrap line. This is all on one line. All right, other than that, hopefully everything just makes some sense. So again, if you look in here, we need our user. That should make sense. And I don't even think we're using the path, so probably we can comment that out. It's not hurting anything for it to be in there. But what we're doing here is we're telling it to try to create a new user. When we tell it to try to create a new user, it's one of two things that's going to happen. There'll either be an error, or we'll create a new user. Now you can name that anything you want, but that'll, since we're trying to create a user, that made sense. If there's an error, what we're telling it to do is basically cycle through here and find all of those errors and stick them in a request object for the session that's called validation errors. All right? And when we're done, we're just going to redirect them to the register. In other words, they didn't register correctly, so we're sending them right back to where they just were. All right? If we get down to here, they put in a username that was unique, and they put in a password. That's all that we're checking for. So we redirect them to the home page because the next step for them would be to log in. Does that all make sense? All right. I'm hoping everybody had a chance to put all that in. Now, if you look over here on the new post controller, okay? I know this isn't even one we looked at, but I just want to mention this to you. Remember this line here? We put it in, and then I said, don't worry about it. Well, today we're actually going to use that. So you may want to go in fact you do, go into your new post controller, and if this line is commented out on yours, just uncomment it. All right, and if it's not there, please add it. All right, so you should have that line, my line 6 in there. I know right now it's grayed out, and don't worry about that. All right. Now, the other things that we had checked on in here, get back to here, was we looked at the new user controller, and yours should look like this. And I don't know, sometimes the system tends to complain when you put that in like that, so I left it off, and it appeared to be just fine. But what this is saying is, not only when we're attempting to put in a new user, not only should we send them to the register page, but, all right, we want to basically grab any errors. This thing right here that you see with the word errors in it, that is what is being used. What was it? It's the register. That is what is being used. Come on, get out of there. In here, that's the same errors right there. All right? So the code that I gave you for that should be correct. Now, I'll move this here. I'm not doing any word wrapping or anything on it, and like I said, it all should be, to my knowledge, it all should be correct. So what we should have after this, and hopefully, if it doesn't work on one of yours, you'll have to let me know and we'll look at it. But we now have handled both error conditions. We have handled the condition where nothing is put in for either of the required fields, meaning we didn't put in a username or we didn't put in a password. All right. Also, we have handled the case when we've got a username that is not unique. All right. So both of those should now be being handled. All right. And I'm looking on here, and mine is up and running, and it has not given me any errors since then. So again, if you look up on the screen here, what you should be able to do now, and I'll just start up, I'm going to close this session here, and I'm just going to start up a new one. So I'm going to do my localhost :8888. So if yours comes in here and looks like this, then again, if you do a new user, oh my goodness, it just worked. Good God. Unbelievable. I just did it twice and it worked both times. And I didn't change anything. Oh my gosh. All right. But when we went to new user, like I said, now it's giving me an error again, and it's the same darn error that it gave before. And there was no problem in here at all. I just did it twice. I ran through it. I showed you the errors, and now it's giving me this again. Good gravy. And the code is correct. All right. Well, the good news is, at least, like I said, all right, even though we're still having some issues with this, what I'd like all of you to do, please, is just take a look up on the screen here, and the package that we're going to add is called Connect Flash. All right, now notice what it says. Flash message middleware for Connect. We want this stuff to flash on the screen, but we don't want it to become part of our actual session itself. All right, the error messages. The errors we want to be part of the session, but those error messages that print out, we want them to show on the screen. But when the user goes and puts in something that is valid, we want those error messages to go away. Right now, they're not going away. All right? So, there's a couple things here we can add. Again, I'm just trying to set it up so it's going to be hopefully easier for us. All right? When I eventually do get this to work. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to stop the program run. You can stop your run, or if you've got another window open, but you're best off stopping the run. And I'm going to grab this Connect Flash. So I'm going to copy this to the clipboard, npm I connect-flash. All right? So there it is. Hit enter to put that in. All right, so now that's there. Oops. I'm going to start my program up again. Again, no errors. That's always a good message. Okay. Then back in my server.js file. Well, now that we've added this, all right, now we can put it in. So const flash equal require connect dash flash. We could have called it connect flash too. It doesn't matter. You can do it either way. It's not really going to matter one way or the other. So I just added line 12 right here, this line. All right. Then after you've added that line, go down to the bottom of your app.use, and we'll do it right here. We want to do it before this wildcard character, so we'll do it right here. This is fine. And all you have to do to use this flash is to say app.use flash paren, like that. And again, remember the idea here, we don't want the errors to persist on our screen. That's why we are adding this package. All right? Now, this is going to require us to make a couple of other changes. So, after you've got this, do your file save, and bring up your store user controller file. All right? Where we have this right now, this is what's causing it to be on the screen and remain on the screen. We just want to change the word session to the word flash. Now, if we do it like that and we say req.flash, it necessitates us because this is part of a session variable. Does that make sense to you? If we run this now, we're going to get an error. All right? So we have to make a change here. All right? And that is we have to do this. And it's just the way that we're accessing it that's different. Now, whoops, forget that. So we have to access it like that. Because we're using the request flash object, we have to change it from what it was, which was req.session.validation errors equal validation errors. We have to change it from that to this, request.flash, then in parens, validation errors, all right, and then this. All right. So save that if you would, please. And go into your new user controller, the one we've got here. Why? Because we have to make a similar type of change in here. Because again, we don't want to use this. We want to use request.flat, oops, not flash. All right, and you can't use the dot, because again, it doesn't understand that. So you put it in like that. So again, I want people to understand what we're changing here is rather than having it be part of the session, we're telling it just to flash as long as you need it and then to go away, for lack of better words. All right. Now that we've done all this, let's customize the error messages. I don't think it's going to like that now. So let's customize the error messages, okay? And to customize the error messages, we want to go in underneath models. All right, underneath models, we want to go into our user model. Our user model right now has username in it, and it has password in it. We're not going to change any of those. What we are going to do is we're going to change their format or whatever it is you want to call this. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say true, then a comma. Please enter a username. Something like, I mean, if you don't like that, you can put this, that's why it's a customized message. So you can put whatever you'd like to put in there. And this one will change also, but instead of username, this will say, please enter a password. Does what's going on here make sense to people? All right, again, so what you've just looked at is how you can go in and customize the error message that you get when you have an error in your MongoDB code. So we put that in. All right. Now, I'm just going to stop right here. Even if I fix it, I'm going to stop anyway. I hate doing that when I start and stop and start and stop. I'm going to see if I can figure out what the darn problem is. All right. And then we'll pick it up there tomorrow, because I've got most of what I wanted to get through with you today done already.